We acknowledge that Tri-Cities Community Television operates on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Kwikwetlem First Nation. We thank the Kwikwetlem who continue to live on these lands and care for them along with the waters and all that is above and below.
On Wednesday, November 19th, the Coquitlam River Watershed Society held a planning workshop, which was hosted by Coquitlam First Nation. Attendees were updated on the actions of Coquitlam First Nation to preserve the watershed and the salmon that call it home. Attendees also viewed a presentation on the accomplishments of the Coquitlam River Watershed Society in 2025 and were updated on the current Coquitlam River Watershed Plan. Tri-Cities Community TV was there and brings you this coverage.
Nancy Thunasqueak, Talitsan at Kwikwetlem, Ainash Kwikwetlem, Quenetsi Quetznala, Ainash Kwikwetlem, Quenetsi Tatlet Hankaminum Squel, Haitsetka, Natsiam Natsiaya. In my language, I was just doing my introduction, just saying greetings, respected ones and friends. My name is Nancy. I am from Kwikwetlem. I'm very happy to see everyone here today. I'm also happy to be learning the Hunkaminam language, and just very glad that we're able to come together today. I do have a presentation, and Councillor George Chaffee sends his regrets. He is looking after his daughter today. She's not feeling well, but in his absence, I do have a presentation, and I can stay for the duration because I'm very interested to find out what has been happening with the society and any ways that the nation can help. But I'll just go into it. So some of the information that you'll see today is probably something that was shared for the Salmon Day. I think that was happening earlier this year. But I just want to put that out there. And also to say that I do a lot of presentations as the cultural coordinator for Kwikwetlem First Nation. I look after a lot of internal community events and programs, but also dealing with external proponents when it comes to education around cultural information sharing, a lot with the school district, which is something that I really enjoy. So this is something that I've prepared from slides that we've worked with our consultant, Nicole Oakes, and she used to do a lot of these presentations, but I'm trying to step into that role to kind of relieve her because she is a very busy woman. But I know I wanted to say more and start this off in a different way, so my apologies. But I just want to say that I am very nervous every time I speak, and I find that just expressing that with the students just gives them a little bit of encouragement to know that you'll probably never ever really get over it, but it's just the value that you bring, that you know that you have words that you can share and information that we can learn from. So I'll just go into it. Sorry. So Kwikwetlem history is characterized by a profound sense of community resilience and a deep connection to our ancestral homeland, Squatlamal Hatsa, the Coquitlam Lake watershed. Our roots extend back over 10,000 years, and our understanding of this rich history is shaped by the wisdom of our elders and knowledge keepers, alongside archaeological findings that illuminate our cultural practices and ways of life prior to colonization. Kwikwetlem people believe that House, the creator, and the transformers designated us as the guardians of the Kwikwetlem watershed, entrusting us with the responsibility to protect and preserve this land for future generations. Our history is embedded in the land itself, conveyed through oral traditions, familial knowledge, place names, and archaeological sites. Throughout periods of abundance and adversity, we have consistently inhabited, nurtured, and depended on our ancestral territories. The lands and waters and all of its resources are what sustains us, and we were once very attentive about maintaining balance for the various surrounding ecosystems. Our families remember that we have always monitored the salmon runs closely, watching for concern and assisting runs when they were struggling. Watersheds were managed by our people to ensure this rich resource was plentiful throughout our lands to flourish. Reconciliation calls for a profound understanding of Indigenous histories and cultures, particularly the intrinsic connection that various nations have to their traditional lands. Recognizing the significance of these lands, especially those that have been appropriated, is crucial for furthering a sense of belonging and identity for our people. Kwikwetlem has been actively creating programs aimed at enhancing awareness of our history, culture, and the importance of ancestral territories. To cultivate a deeper understanding, it is essential to incorporate the interests of Indigenous nations into work plans and methodologies. Providing context about the Kwikwetlem Nation and our territory, along with key historical elements, can further enrich this understanding. Kwikwetlem are the original inhabitants of Kwikwetlem territory, maintaining unique cultural and political identities while also fostering connections with neighboring nations. Our traditional territory encompasses lands that are embedded with profound spiritual and cultural significance, where countless generations have lived, hunted, fished, and traveled, sustaining our families for millennium. Elders emphasize the importance of these lands, asserting that they hold the nation's history and that understanding the land is essential to grasping Kwikwetlem heritage. The lands are unceded, meaning they were taken without consent or treaty, highlighting the ongoing responsibility to collaborate in the present. The Kwikwetlem reserves, which include ancestral villages, bear names and archaeological evidence of continuous use for thousands of years. The Kwikwetlem people have lived in our traditional territory, known as the Coquitlam Watershed, and surrounding areas since before remembered time. Archaeological findings confirm continuous occupation of our territory, dating back to the end of the most recent ice age. Our traditional territory centers on the watershed of Squetlamahatsa, the Coquitlam Lake, including the upper and lower Squetlamastatlo, the Coquitlam Rivers, and extend east to the lands around Pitt Lake and both sides of the lower Pitt River. To the west, our territory includes Mosum Creek, Port Moody Inlet, and Stony Creek, the lands of Sapperton Heights, and the north arm of the Fraser River. To the south, it reaches from Barnston Island to Annis's Island and the surrounding Fraser uplands. These lands correspond with present-day municipalities including Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, Pitt Meadows, Burnaby, Surrey, New Westminster, the village of Anmore, and parts of the provincial and federal lands. Kwikwetlem First Nation has never ceded, surrendered, or abandoned our rights and the responsibilities to these lands. Our title remains unextinguished. Kwikwetlem families maintain deep-rooted connections to our territory, and we are committed to protecting and caring for it for the benefit of present and future generations. As we work together with all our neighbors into the future, we are guided by the teachings of our ancestors to carry on the same as of old, upholding our responsibilities to land, water, and all living things. So this one, I don't have anything prepared, but this is something that we were able to compile when it came to traditional use studies within our territory. A lot of other First Nations across the country and Canada have been able to look at their territory as a whole, but what Kwikwetlem has had to do is kind of look more at project-based places where we can gather that information and really focus on that area. So one was I think it was the Coquitlam Dam seismic upgrade, and the other one was the Port Mann when they did the reconstruction. So that's kind of where we started with our communities and with other surrounding communities to gather information about Kwikwetlem, diving into the archives and conducting a lot of interviews. At the top here we have August John and Nancy Joe, my grandmother, who I'm named after. She was a very strong hunter and also a strong fisherman on the river. She was said to have hunted in Pitt Lake with her grandfather and fished on the Fraser River, and was actually quite respected by the commercial fishermen. To the right, we have Elizabeth Cunningham, one of the daughters of Kwikwetlem William, one of the founders of the town. And then just below that is her son, Bernie Cunningham, who actually held quite a lot of information about Kwikwetlem. And we're very lucky to have quite a few interviews with him. And what was interesting and was really funny is that a lot of the times we'll be very respectful when we use information, even if we have gathered it for a certain purpose. We'll continue to go to that person to make sure that they're okay with what we're using that information for. And he was really frustrated with us because he just got tired of us asking. And so it was really nice to know that they see the benefit of what we're compiling this information for, so that we can use it for our future generations. And then just here to the last photo on the bottom is IR1, where we are sitting right now at Satlamikman. And it's just where the church was sitting. Actually, it's kind of hard to see just behind the trees there. But you can kind of see what the land used to look like. But this is something that I've been really, really grateful for, to utilize a lot of these slides. And this is where I've developed a lot of my content from. And so all Coast Salish peoples established their connections and rights to the land through deep-rooted teachings and creation stories that emphasize stewardship, community laws, and governance, known as siatlas. These teachings, developed over millennia, fostered the growth of healthy and sustainable communities, intertwining systems of economy, law, justice, medicine, and conservation with oral traditions that link individuals to the natural world. Elders often speak of maintaining balance with the land, highlighting the interconnectedness of humans, nature, and the spirit realm. The phrase, all my relations, is commonly used to express the profound connection to the land, family, and the broader environment. The Kwikwetlem culture is intrinsically tied to the land, particularly the Coquitlam watershed, with the term Kwikwetlem in Hunkaminam meaning small red fish. This name references the early spring sockeye salmon that once thrived in the Coquitlam River, so abundant that it was said one could walk across their backs. The significance of this fish is echoed in various place names within the territory, such as the Hunkaminam designation for R1, which translates to young sockeye, which is Slakayans in our language, underscoring the village's historical importance as a home to the first sockeye run up the Fraser River of the year. Numerous creation stories further connect the Coquitlam people to the fish, water, and lands of Coquitlam, including a significant narrative involving Hulse, a transformer sent by the Creator to restore balance to the world. These transformer stories and their associated locations are vital components of Coast Salish spiritual beliefs, intricately linked to specific elements on the landscape. The history of the Coquitlam sockeye serves as a poignant representation of the Coquitlam people's experience with colonization. The construction of the Coquitlam Dam nearly drove the sockeye salmon to extinction, despite early protests from Chief Johnny, who penned a letter addressing the detrimental effects of water diversion on salmon health. Unfortunately, this appeal went unheeded, and by 1913, the dam was completed with minimal regard for the sockeye population. The resulting inundation submerged ancestral villages and camps, further eroding the cultural landscape of Kwikwetlem First Nation. Today, there's an urgent need for a shift in how development is approached, as urban expansion continues without adequate input from Kwikwetlem. The ongoing impacts of the Coquitlam River, including increased siltation and reduced water flow, have left the community striving to safeguard their natural habitats and wildlife. Here I've been very fortunate to be on the land before I became the coordinator, cultural coordinator, and so I did find a lot of times of getting out onto the land is something that not many people have the opportunity to do. And a lot of the places that I've been to, you wouldn't go there unless you had to actually work there. So I've been very fortunate enough to see a lot of my territory, to be out on the land as much as I have. And here is kind of a really disturbing photo for me. But what I'd like to explain about this photo is that the artifacts that you're seeing on the right are very old technologies. Some of the newer technologies that we would have seen a few hundred years ago are now submerged because of the lake levels where they sit right now. So what we are finding is at the high pool level, which was dating back to about 7,000 to 8,000 years for these artifacts, which is very still useful to find, but at the same time we have lost access to all of the newer technologies that we would have had at the lower elevations where the lake actually had their levels at first. So, and so this one is just going back to the map of our territory. And so reserves represent only a small fraction of the nation's territory, which was historically essential for the community's sustenance prior to the arrival of settlers. Over the last 160 years, the traditional land has undergone significant urbanization, with most undeveloped areas now governed by external authorities, limiting free access and traditional practices. This situation has adversely affected the cultural health of the Kwikwetlem people, leading to a profound disconnection from their heritage. A pressing challenge for the community today is the lack of access to non-urbanized spaces necessary for practicing traditional cultural activities, such as berry picking, medicine gathering, tree bark stripping, spiritual bathing, hunting, trapping, and conducting ceremonies in private locations. The vitality of a culture hinges on the continuous engagement in these traditional practices. This map indicates the various governments and external authorities over the lands of Kwikwetlem territory. The blue shaded area, the first area in blue, shows the high multi-purpose uses from residential, commercial, and industrial areas in the lower reaches of our lands. The red shaded area shows the lands used for drinking water for the surrounding region supplied by the Coquitlam Lake watershed. The green shaded area shows the lands that includes the provincial parklands and at and around Pitt Lake, that is known and respected by Kwikwetlem as Katzie Core Territory, our sister nation. The yellow shaded areas, although I think there's an error here, The Metro Vancouver also manages a variety of regional parks that are shaded in yellow, which includes Minikata, Widgeon, and Coquitlam, formerly known as Colony Farm. So I think what was shaded here was Douglas Island. I don't know if Metro Vancouver manages that, but I think that's a mistake there. And then the last one is the purple shaded area, or the wildlife reserves or wildlife management areas. And so the significant control exerted by external groups and governments has severely limited the autonomy of Kwikwetlem in utilizing their lands. Although there are opportunities to identify areas for use, the process remains constrained, and any cultural or spiritual activities require formal agreements or prior notifications. This situation underscores the challenges faced by Kwikwetlem in exercising their rights over their ancestral territories. Kwikwetlem elders, community leaders, and our rising youth are committed to the stewardship of their lands and the preservation of spaces vital for traditional and cultural practices. This initiative emphasizes the reclamation of cultural identity through dialogues with community elders and partnerships with neighboring nations. Through extensive research and a steadfast dedication to rediscovering our heritage, we have cultivated a foundational understanding that revitalizes our sense of identity. The Hunkaminam language is one of 3 dialects in this region of the Lower Fraser River, which includes Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Tsawwassen, Kwikwetlem, Katzie, and Kwantlen First Nations. The Hunkaminam dialect is on Vancouver Island, which includes Duncan, Nanaimo, and Cowichan First Nations. The Hulkamelam dialect is the umbrella language for all 3 of these and is spoken upriver from Matsqui to Yale. And so to put this into context, I just created a map. As we work to revitalize our language, we are grateful for the support from neighboring communities engaged in this vital effort. Local nations, including Kwikwetlem, are collaborating to enhance awareness within our communities while partnering with educational institutions that can further promote these language programs and initiatives. A new generation is emerging, driven by a strong desire to revitalize our language, leading to an increase in the number of speakers and interested learners of all ages. And this is something, another slide that I like to just refer back to is just really understanding what UNDRIP means. That's something that I haven't really explored all of the articles for. But again, just reiterating that this is something that's very important to remember. And so reconciliation starts with truth. And I really like this slide because I think this came from a lot of the work that we did with George Chaffee about just really talking about a lot of the hard discussions that are needed to happen right now to really address a lot of the pain that our people have felt and to really realize and put into perspective of how recent these things have happened. So in 1858, the early colonial policing, Indigenous peoples were not allowed to gather overnight in New Westminster city limits. In 1883, residential schools, John A. Macdonald authorizes Indian residential schools to force Indigenous assimilation. In 1884, anti-potlatch legislation, national anti-potlatch legislation banned all major cultural and religious gatherings and ceremonies until 1951. In 1914, wearing ceremonial regalia was made illegal. In 1927, barred from legal, Indian Act amendments make it illegal for status Indians to hire lawyers, seek legal advice, fundraise for land claims, or meet in groups. And in 1993, the Indian Act appoints RCMP officers as truant officers to enforce attendance and return truant children to residential schools. And so all of these our community is still healing from. We are still trying to grasp the reality of the situation and how far we've been impacted by all of this. And we find that our community is really coming together to make sure that all of these initiatives are taking ground and actually being implemented in the community. When we started in the year 2000, it was Chief Marvin Joe who appointed his 2 brothers, Glenn Joe and George Chaffee, as resource workers to fix the BC Hydro file. This was at a time when the local governments, municipalities, and many other stakeholders were called for community input for the water use planning, being led by BC Hydro and the Greater Vancouver Regional District at that time, which is now known as Metro Vancouver and consists of the local municipal leaders. Kwikwetlem was asked as a nation what grievances we had for the Kwikwetlem Dam. Glenn, Joe, and George Chaffee never forgot the stories of the historic sockeye run that their mother had shared stories of throughout their childhoods. She would recall the stories of the sockeye that was stopped by the dam at the turn of the century with her brothers and sisters during fishing seasons or at any times that their family would gather. Back then, family held a deeper meaning, and the time spent together was filled with stories. Funny stories about fishing, hunting, and traveling, and crazy stories about the silliness they would get into with friends and loved ones. But they would also talk about the serious matters about family, the changing world, and our legends, the deep time stories that were passed down and repeated regularly, especially to the young ones. These stories would hold our teachings, and many of us do not realize how much of our culture has actually survived through these stories alone. In many ways, we were unknowingly passing this valuable knowledge to our children amongst all the chaos we were surviving as a people. I am grateful to have experienced these moments when I was a child, which serves as a testament to our nation's everlasting commitment to oral traditions and storytelling, despite the surmountable challenges we had faced. I recall all of the stories of the Sasquatch, about the deer with the girl's face in Pitt Lake, and so many other legends as we would play around the backyard near the fire by the river. This historical knowledge from their mother and their family served as the catalyst for research into the sockeye salmon in the Coquitlam River. Glenn and George began collaborating with various stewardship groups that shared a commitment to the health of the Coquitlam watershed, and the necessary studies were initiated to locate the sockeye and determine whether they possessed the same genetic signatures for return. In 2008, the first successful return of 10 sockeye marked a significant milestone, celebrated by Glenn Joe's declaration of a collective achievement. This moment represented not just a triumph for the Kwikwetlem, but also a recognition of all those who played a role in this success. It also enforced our nation's identity and authority over the lands, emphasizing that we were not merely stakeholders, but the Kwikwetlem First Nation, governing this land for millennium. This victory affirms our right to safeguard our resources backed by the generations of knowledge regarding the essential balance required for our lands and waters. I stand here today honored by the teaching shared by George and Glenn that have and always will be with me in my heart. I will always be grateful for the sense of purpose they have provided me with through including me in these meetings at a very young age, and to help with all of the work as they themselves were also learning. I was 16 years old when George and I would study the 4 court cases, the Delgamuukw, Vanderpeet, and Sparrow decisions, and the 4th I could never recall, but it was the Gladstone decision. I recalled this only after discovering the family connection with one of our dear staff members, Idina Vey. She actually came to return to the nation after years of being away, and I don't think there was one year that we didn't ask for her to come back as a community, but she's a very dear friend. But this research was for us to begin to understand our rights and title to the land. Through my 15 years in the field, from 2001 to 2016, when I had my first child, Jamie, I would participate in archaeological studies such as the one for the Coquitlam Dam seismic upgrade and monitoring large infrastructure projects such as the Port Mann Bridge reconstruction. I can say I'm one to be fortunate enough to see and have been on the land as much as I have. Whether I was getting dirty on the land looking for archaeology or out on the river with fishing with George and Glenn, I was always being taught something about our people, our history, and how to fight for our nation. The strength of these 2 brothers was felt through the passion to restore what was taken from us. Their courage was seen in the countless never-ending meetings when we struggled to keep up with the demand of having Kwikwetlem rights heard. In a recent presentation earlier this summer with a class of SFU students, Dr. Craig Orr recently shared the number of meetings that were held for the water use planning alone. Something like over 150 meetings, not to mention the hundreds of hours of discussions amongst our own teams. Through all of these frustrations, the long talks to help educate those beside us and against us, their hands were always open to finding a solution. It was not easy, but we developed strong connections with good people. People like Doug Brown and Nicole Oakes of Brown and Oakes Archaeology, who have helped us more than they will ever know to compile and safeguard the history and the culture of Kwikwetlem. Dr. Craig Orr and the Watershed Watch Salmon Society, who stood unwaveringly for years beside us as we faced some of the largest proponents around. Tony Mattia from the North Fraser Salmon Assistant Project, who helped us restore and enhance salmon rearing systems on the Coquitlam River. Diane Ramage, who we met as a maple stream keeper in 2001, and who continues to provide us with support and guidance. Dave Benny from the Noons Creek Hatchery, who we met with his father, Doug Benny, who both showed us so much respect and support for our nation, and later would help address the construction concerns for one of the largest archaeological sites in our territory, in Port Coquitlam. Matt Foy, who was from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and a pleasant surprise to create an alliance with, and who gave us so much advice that we needed to try different approaches and to get the results we needed. And there were so many others who seen our vision even when we couldn't. Working together, we formed the Coquitlam Sockeye Restoration Project, the KSRP, which is still continuing this important work. Together, we would find the strength to continue when at times it all felt completely hopeless. We were a small nation, barely recognized by anyone, walking into meetings with 30 people or more, all with education and extensive backgrounds in their fields. We were just fishermen from a small, quiet nation with a passion to make things better for our children. In a recent presentation with the local school district, George quite accurately explained how we have had to become archaeologists, hydrologists, and everything in between to understand the true impacts of the development in our territory. We were painfully aware that we did not know all of the traditional or cultural teachings, but the ones we were shown and told of, we held on closely and adhered to with devotion. And our elders from other nations and our other communities would reassure us to keep going. We were so focused on our work, but occasionally we would hear about the commotion we were creating. Not only governments, but other First Nations across the country were said to be asking, "Do you hear what Kwikwetlem is doing?" In reality, we have lived and breathed this work day in and day out, while those that opposed us had the privilege to go home and forget about their work and to be able to turn off their brains. We went home at the end of each day knowing the full weight of the decisions being made. We had one chance to get this right. The restoration of our sockeye salmon was just one of over 30 files we had to manage simultaneously, each carrying equal importance. This period highlighted the significant capacity required to tackle our extensive list of concerns. We endeavored to balance these responsibilities to the best we could, all the while feeling the pressure of not meeting the growing demands. As we dove into the historic files, the Chief David Bailey file, the fisheries and river siltation reports throughout the recent decades, the flooding and diking reports, there was a picture becoming very clear. Kwikwetlem was just coming to realize the extent of damage to our people and our territory. We caught on to their games they would play and the loops they would send us in to avoid accountability. Discovering the true threat to our cemetery on IR2 was devastating to our community. This also brought us out onto the land as we visited each stream, each and every creek on the Coquitlam River, as we started to understand the hydrology during heavy rain events. We witnessed firsthand the volume of water from runoff from the surrounding extensive developments and how it greatly contributes to the flooding of our cemetery. But as we tried to express our concerns, we quickly learned how much it would take to address the damage, let alone repair it. This is when I understood how well George knew their games. He would arrange to have everyone come together rather than the continuous finger pointing of all the various governments that were clearly responsible, and they would say it wasn't just us, it was them too. With our current staff at 48, that now has a lands and resource team of roughly 12 with 4 Indigenous guardians, we first started with just the 3 of us in one small office as the LNR team, the lands and resource team. Many times volunteering our time to keep projects going while there was no funding being provided. Chief Marvin Joe helped us through a full year and a half where we volunteered without question, where we relied on on field work and fishing and finding funding through small projects for a handful of meetings. We still made sure that the projects continued. However, beyond all of these struggles, we started to see our wins. No matter how small the victory, we took it as a sign that we were doing something right. Fighting the good fight is a phrase we often shared with elders like Mel Bailey and Albert Phillips, who fueled us with words of wisdom and hope when we were feeling down. I remember we all had the same question amongst our small group, who could see the potential of returning the sockeye. Why aren't others seeing what we see? No one else seemed to care, despite us reaching out to family members and other young ones my age. With how fast the world was changing, it was hard to imagine a time that we would understand and help each other. We would always recall when my Uncle Homer often would tell us, there will be a time that all the nations will unite and fight together as one for our people. And it was Albert Phillips who taught us that there only needs to be one person who remembers the old teachings, one person with the passion to keep our culture alive for our people. As long as there is one, we are not dead and forgotten. And he was right. In Hunkaminam, the word Huntsawayas means to come back to life or to return after thought dead. Starting with just a handful of remaining sockeyes and a small team from Kwikwetlem, our name has been restored. To have this hatchery, the Kwikwetlem hatchery, is no small feat, and I will forever remember all that went into it. The true blood, sweat, and tears, and all of the sacrifices, and all of the victories and smiles brought back to our community with pride. And the honor it is to walk with the strong ones beside us, who are not just friends or allies, but the true meaning of family who came to our side when we needed it. I have said before and believe in my heart that the work we do today will be less for our children, so that they can enjoy being Kwikwetlem and all that it means for them, without the stresses of rectifying the wrongs of the past. Each generation has responsibility and their own trials and tribulations to overcome, but soon we will be whole again, with our songs, our language, our salmon, and our culture, and our people thriving in unity, strength, and prosperity once again. Our nation has endured the same challenges faced by so many Indigenous communities, striving to build a vibrant future despite significant obstacles. Many individuals continue to confront addiction on their path to recovery, and we have experienced the troubling loss of community members over the past few decades. While we grapple with the capacity needed to foster a thriving environment, our determination to secure a better tomorrow for our children remains unwavering. As Councillor Chaffee has said many times, Kwikwetlem may be a small nation, but we have a huge heartbeat. From the loss of our loved ones due to addictions or the inability to cope in this new world, to the continuous realizations of the atrocities and adversities our people have had to face, words truly cannot express the grief we feel on a daily basis as we continue to rectify these wrongs from the past. We are all exhausted from keeping up with this demand while also meeting our own needs and our own personal lives. Yet you will not ever find us really saying no to an opportunity to help educate those who are willing to listen. We understand the need to help educate those who may not know the extent of what has happened. Through these collaborations, Kwikwetlem has built strong relationships with surrounding groups and communities, and it is through the compassion shared when learning our story and our goals that numerous people have helped our nation achieve what we have over the past few decades. So that one kind of leaves me a bit emotional. So what I do is I just kind of wrap it up with some of the good work that we're doing going forward. So this comes from our lands and resource team about some of the initiatives that we're taking on. Although these slides are quite old, they're at least 2 or 3 years old, but it is something that I know that we are continuing with. So like the Marine Resource Stewardship Program, although I can't speak to as well as the lands and resource team can, or the folks working on it. I can say that I think for the project description it says using new technology called eDNA metabarcoding, to research fish species at Addington Point. The goal is to understand the positive and negative impacts of dike removal on fish species, diversity, vegetation, and water quality, and monitor the changes that occur year over year. The benefits is, if this project is successful, we will be able to use the same technology to identify potential restoration areas throughout Coquitlam territory and see how restoration work is benefiting fish species as well as other species the nation may be interested in. The other one is the terrestrial cumulative effects initiative. So the description compares species types between the upper and lower Coquitlam watershed through the use of wildlife cameras and historical records of wildlife presence. The goal is to quantify the effects of urbanization on the Coquitlam watershed, specifically on wildlife such as black bear, deer, bobcat, and coyote. The benefits are to inform better management of wildlife populations for KFN-driven activities such as hunting. But I know that they're just getting into bringing those cameras down because they have been up in the watershed, and so now they want to see what the lower area looks like. I just heard that earlier this year. And then for the Aquatic Habitat Rehabilitation Fund, the description is to restore fish habitat at sheep paddocks, Wilson Farm, and the mouth of the Coquitlam River. The goal is to improve and create favorable habitat conditions for rearing salmon, and the benefits to increase the number of salmon returning to the river to benefit KFN-driven activities such as fishing and overall improve the ecosystem health. Sorry. And then the hunting program is actually really exciting because I'm one of the hunters, but actually just this year. But this started a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I want to say. But it is, KFN has entered into a formal agreement with GVWD to support and facilitate safe access by KFN members to the Coquitlam water supply area for cultural purposes and to facilitate the hunting of deer. And the benefits is reconnecting KFN members to the land and traditional practices. So I was really lucky that my brother got the first deer 2 years ago on my 40th birthday. I was really excited. And so this year I'm joining him. He did ask George last year, but he wasn't able to go with George. But we are going out again this year, and I think we are able to target elk as well. I just seen, which was weird because I've never seen elk tracks, but I've been around deer tracks enough to know that those weren't deer tracks. That was definitely elk tracks. They were a lot larger and rounded, so a lot different from what I'm used to seeing. But that was way at the very north end. So with that, there's still regulations about how we catch it to make sure that we're following all the regulations in the watershed while we're in there. And I know that they're hoping to expand the species list to maybe include bear. I don't know any of my own community that enjoy bear, but we do know that other First Nations would like to trade for it. And we were actually very lucky to have some help from Tsawwassen. His name's Mike Baird, but he helped us with the BC Day Salmon Festival. And so he was able to provide us some salmon because I think it was really funny because it was Finn Donnelly and Al Liu. They came across like a whole bunch of salmon, and we're like, oh great, like what kind of salmon? And they said pink, and we're like, and then it was one of our elders who was on the board, and she's like, do you want us to make fun of you? Because we're not going to eat that salmon. And like, pink salmon is really good. There's still nothing wrong with it, but our elders prefer not to consume pink salmon. And so then the job was to make sure that we had other salmon that was available. So Mike Barrett has said that he would like a bear. And we're like, okay, well, you can come up with us if you want to, do some hunting with us. And he's never responded to that. And so I think he just wants to trade, which is fine, but we just got to work ourselves up to that. And I'm just looking to go with my brother this year to find out what I can bring when it comes to other teachings, when it comes to scraping the hide or different things, because there are so many uses for the deer itself, and just ways that I think our hunters are not very culturally inclined to think about those things. So I'm just going to join just to see. And my brother's definitely not one of them. But I'm very grateful to have his teachings. And so again, just going over some of the work that we do in the community is just revitalizing our culture by developing relationships with surrounding communities. Although we do have some resistance when working with the RCMP, our leadership is very much about working with them to really show that those barriers can come down and finding ways that we can work with them in a better way. This one was a really awesome one. I was able to bring, our elder has passed, but she's on the right, and that's Beverly Murkowski. She was vision impaired. And then on the left is Juanita. She's one of our staff members, our long-term staff members. But I was able to bring them up for chanterelle mushroom picking to the watershed. And I think it was Craig Orr, actually, who brought us up to the watershed to show us how to look for them. And it was on Thursday. And they said by Saturday the frost was coming, and by that time there's no more, you can't consume the mushrooms. They're not edible. And so I was just like, okay, we only have one more day. And so then I got these two out. And we actually did found about 4 paper bags full of chanterelle mushrooms. I was really mad with Glenn. He's my cousin who passed earlier this year. But he said he wanted to go up there. He said, oh, yeah, you could sell them for quite a lot. I'm like, you are not picking my mushrooms to sell them. And so I was really mad. He knows that now. But, and this one is actually my son and my nephew. But this is when we got our first old growth log from the Coquitlam watershed. This one is a naturally fallen log that fell over in a storm. But it's, I can't recall, I think it's 700 to 800 years old. At least 700 years old. But it broke in 3 places, or in 3 pieces, and so we've used 2 of the pieces for the house post. This was the first one that was carved at Noons Creek Hatchery. We were granted permission by Dave Benny to join him there, and it was Brandon Gabriel from Kwikwetlem First Nation who carved this one, and he took the story of the sockeye. So this is the restoration of the sockeye story. And every cedar tree has a female spirit. So at the top you'll see a female. She has a bonnet of like 4 feathers on her headdress, although we don't have headdresses. I think Brandon just wanted to represent each one of our families. And I think that's the same for the eggs that are on the bottom. But I don't have another picture of the other one. But this was another big event for our community to start cedar harvesting in the Coquitlam watershed. And this one we had actually 3 events that we were able to do, 2 in the watershed and 1 at Mundy Park, which is actually right here. So we have Chief Ed there. And Christine and I, this is during one of our scouting tours, just go up to the watershed to see where we would be stripping. Christina was really frustrated because Richard Stewart had promised us an educational kiosk to understand what it is that we were doing in the park. And to this day, it has not been erected. I think we're just going to go create one because it's not his fault. It's just a matter of speaking with the city. But we have our youth here who I'm very proud of, Kalia Lopez and Bree Hall, who are helping to remove the outer bark. And then this is Christina's son, who's actually doing the stripping. That's Pierce Cunningham, and me and my little son down there. But yeah, so, but I just wanted to say that I'm very grateful to be able to speak with you today. I know that the loss of my cousin Glenn Joe earlier this year, I think, is what made me a bit emotional. But I find that for having the hatchery, the Kwikwetlem Talk hatchery, it means Kwikwetlem Return Home, to have that established is something that I feel like we are being gifted many times to celebrate this year. And so I think there's been about at least 3 or 4 times that we've been able to celebrate. And I think that's definitely not lost on Glenn trying to do that for us. And I wish he was here. I wish Glenn Joel was here to see all of the good work that we're doing. He was not doing well during the last part of his life, but he had such a passion that we still share. I'll try not to get emotional here. But I do value all of the work that he did for the society, for the watershed, and all of the visions that he had that still live within us. And I'm very grateful to be working alongside George when it comes to, although I have kind of taken a different path when it comes to the culture, I'm still very much tied to a lot of the land work that we're doing, just to kind of restore the territory. I have a big passion for it, and I can go on forever, so I don't want to take too much time. But thank you very much, and please let me know if you have any questions, and I'm looking forward to hearing what we can talk about today. Thank you. Oh, absolutely, yes.
You mentioned that the effects of the runoff of the river streams affected your cemetery? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, more from the development. It's just from the surface runoff and the increased flow. So it does create a higher flow in rain events during storms. And there are so many times that our cemetery has seen a lot of flooding in various aspects. But we're trying to get a handle on what the impacts are and how we can actually address it. But we did notice that there's quite a lot of runoff that comes from the development. And that's just, and what's frustrating, and I try to explain this in the best way, but like when it comes to the diking systems in the watershed, you'll see that in the upper areas, it's like right up to the water, like right up to the river.
Right.
And then it's so coincidentally, it opens right at our reserve. And so then we essentially became the sponge for whatever first water came down and was actually opened up right at our reserve. And so there are many of the land alterations as well that have attributed to that as well. Like the river actually used to go through a portion of the city of Port Coquitlam in the main stem there. So we're still doing a lot of studies on it to find out how we can rectify the situation. But I do know that there's some works going on for the Reeve Slough project. I think it's habitat work, but it's also to help with our cemetery to bring the water levels down. And actually, we were really lucky that we had Tony Mattia. He was with us one time when we did a field visit to the cemetery, and he was so cute because he said that every one of you could grab a shovel, and he says, and we could start digging, and we could help this First Nation right now. And I was just like, but it was just awesome to see the outreach from so many people to try and help us rectify that situation, and they know the pain that we're feeling for that. When I buried my mom in 2004, I could only go down 4 feet before the water started to really fill in. And in the Chief David Bailey file, which I referred to, I don't know where it sits right now, but it had a lot of our historical information in one binder. And that one talked about how we chose that area to be the cemetery because it was the highest, driest ridge on our land, on IR2. And so it would make sense that that's what we would choose for our cemetery. And so throughout the times, our land has definitely eroded from all of the impacts surrounding the land. It's hard for me to explain because I don't know all of the terminology. but just throughout the years of just hearing about it and then being involved in it, I can say that I've been at the cemetery where the water has been just rushing past my feet, just coming from the Coquitlam pump station. And so just trying to address it and trying to make it known that we're not here to make it hard for anybody else, but this has to be addressed so that we can move forward. Because our community is still looking to see if we need to find a different location. Our community is so focused on the cemetery, though, that and they have such a deep connection to it, that they don't want to bury their loved ones elsewhere. And so we are looking for a different location, but we're just having a hard time finding one. But yeah, so that's kind of the impacts of it.
I'll hold my other question.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
Was the Riverview lands ever considered cemetery lands for you?
I'm not too sure. I can't say 100%, but I think we did have occupation there. That would have been the first lands that we would have retreated to in times of flood or even war or invasion. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything that the Kwikwetlem community knows about an actual cemetery being there, like historically from our nation. But there was one actually just north of that. I think it was Ranch Park. I don't know if that's on near Mariner.
Well, there is there is a cemetery for the people who worked in Riverview.
Yes, yeah,
That's in Ranch Park.
yes, yeah, and I think there are some of our members who might be buried at the Riverview Cemetery right now.
There are unidentified remains there, you know.
Oh yes, yeah. I think we're hoping to find out more if there's any more in the archives, but we've like literally hit all the archives that we can and try to get all the information. But one thing I can say is that it's really odd that a lot of First Nations find that it's hard to find information on them, but I find it's even more so for Coquitlam. I don't know because I don't talk to any other First Nations or see their plight. But at the same time, it's just so hard for Coquitlam to find any information on us. And so we're trying to figure out what that is. But it feels like we were really targeted really harshly. That's what it feels like anyway. Oh, yes.
I just have a question about, you were talking about traditional hunting in the Coquitlam watershed.
Yes.
Is there any opportunity for traditional plant gathering and harvesting up there?
Yeah, we kind of did that with the cedar harvesting in the watershed. We're lucky to have Metro Vancouver. They're really great about working with us. I think it's Kevin Brown and Mike Myers are the two names that really stand out. But they've been really good folks to work with, and they've really opened the doors for Kwikwetlem to come up, and they understand that we're willing to follow all the regulations to make sure that our community can continue to go up there. And I think that's one thing that we're keeping in our own minds, to make sure that our community is aware of the need to work with Metro Vancouver, because it's hard to say that a lot of our own community have a different perspective on that, and they're like, oh no, we should be able to do anything that we want. It's just like no. It's just like, let's make sure that we don't ruin it for everybody. So, but we're making sure that those regulations are in place within the nation itself, so that we can practice whatever we need to up there. And so we've done cedar harvesting, mushroom foraging, and berry picking up in the Coquitlam watershed. And it's been very sporadic, like not very consistent. The only thing that has been consistent is the cedar stripping. Other than that, it's just in the odd chance that we want to do berry picking or mushroom foraging. This year we didn't do any of that. But one thing I do want to get up to is to do spiritual bathing. And if we can do that at the confluence of Ore Creek and Coquitlam River, we need a man's area and a women's area. They can't be connected. But I think having that at the confluence would keep our groups in a close proximity for safety. And then that way we can share that day together. But one thing I want to do is cedar brushing is one of our other traditional practices. We don't do the smudging. We never had sage in our area. So we did cedar brushing to remove negative energy. And so that's one thing I will incorporate for the spiritual bathing. But one thing I want to do is sound bowl healing and sound bowl meditation, because I think that would be a nice way to kind of wrap it up. But then again, just sharing a traditional meal. Because sharing traditional foods, although our community isn't fully aware of the impact of that, they're definitely adverse to any salmon. And so if you bring out salmon, it's just like, we need to share a traditional meal. We just got to find different foods. So that's kind of what I'm hoping that with the hunting program, it'll also expand, not just with bear and elk, but with grouse as well, like smaller game. And even with the fish in the lake. I don't know what that would look like. It's a little something that we're hesitant to bring up to Metro Vancouver, but at the same time, they have a large fish population in the lake. And so they have like cutthroat trout, I think it's long-nosed sucker, and northern pike minnow. I have the names wrong, I think, but there's quite a large fish population up there that we could definitely try some of those traditional foods with.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've got one more question,
yeah.
if I could.
Absolutely.
A couple of years ago, I read an article, several articles, regarding restoration of the Hooligan breeding grounds at the bottom of the river.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if the Aquatic Habitat Restoration Fund deals with that type.
I can't say for sure if they're separate, but that kind of stemmed from the Port Mann Bridge reconstruction.
Right.
And it was actually when we brought our community together, we had an older building here before we had this one. And I remember bringing our community in, and we were asking, like, what do you want to see from the Port Mann Bridge reconstruction? So we kind of left it to them, and they didn't really know. It was at a time where we were still gathering a lot of information, and so they didn't really know what to relay. So George was like, well, what about the Hooligan? Like, we love the Hooligan, and what about the sturgeon? And so then we decided to do sturgeon studies to find out what the decline was, especially with the Hooligan. Because I remember in 1998, Glenn Joe, he went into Smokehouse, which is a very traditional, almost like our church. It's not religious or anything, but it's a spiritual way of healing. And he decided to go in to become a mass dancer. And for that, created a lot of trade. You needed to trade a lot of resources to say thank you for the work that they were about to undertake with him. And so we were going out to do hooligan fishing, and we were catching, I don't know why, but I counted 1,000 per Rubbermaid tote. And so I don't know what made me count it, but we were catching about 4,000 because we'd have 4 totes with us. And we would deliver that up to Stehelis up the valley because they were the ones who were going to take them in. And nowadays, I think it was about maybe 15 years ago when George and I went out, and it could be that we just didn't catch the run properly, but it was a struggle. For the whole day, we would be drifting, and we would barely catch 100. And so before, when we were catching 4,000 quite easily within a few hours, it drastically changed just in my time. And so some of the other changes that we've noticed is that my aunt used to say that we used to pick up the dead hooligans on the beach because they were still live. They were still kind of flipping around. They weren't really fully dead. And so they were still fresh. And we can collect those, and it was a little bit easier than actually fishing for them. And then George had mentioned that he says, oh yeah, he says, I remember we used to pick up the dead ones. And she got so insulted with him because he says, no, we never ate the dead ones. We only ate the live ones. But it showed in that time frame of when she was younger to when he was a child, the drastic change and how they had to actually pick up the more not so live ones. But yeah, those are some of the things that we've tried to initiate when it came to the projects that were going on around us. And then especially with the sturgeon, which I think is still continuing, all of that work is continuing for the Patella Bridge as well. And I think Craig Orr is also a part of that work.
Thank you.
Which we're very grateful for. Oh, yes.
A question about the eDNA work at the point.
Oh, yes.
Because I don't know all the results from that. They did the genomics at Kwikwetlem.
Oh, really?
And I was told that it was very successful. They got a really useful tool out of it that can be like zoomed in and pull up all the different relative species.
Yes.
I'm just curious what next steps might be planned, or if there is plans to do more.
I think so. I'm not too sure. Like I said, I can't really speak to too much of that, but I do know that I'm really excited that they are doing that work. And I think there's so much more that our Lands and Resource team has exploded into. We do have a lot more Indigenous guardians and even junior guardians, which I'm really grateful for. We don't have a youth group yet, like within the community. But once we initiate that, then there'll be so much more engagement we can do with the younger generation. But right now, they're not established yet. We're still getting the elders group and the adults group going. And so once we get the youth group going, we're hoping to have a lot more junior guardians going out. And I'm hoping to bring some information and resources to them as well. We have one person who is from Burnaby, actually. I can't recall which creek it was, but he had been struggling for years to get any headway with the concerns that he was seeing in his neighborhood for the fish. And he could see the salmon mortality, like the fish kills, like in real time. And so he was witnessing it. And for all the years that he was trying to get headway with it, he wasn't getting anywhere. And finally he contacted George, and they got quite a lot done within the last 2 years. But again, I'd have to get him to speak more to that. But very, very grateful for our team.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy. That was a really wonderful presentation,
Thank
and just beautiful to
Yes.
see how how the Coquitlam are revitalizing their culture.
Yeah.
my connection to.
But I'm looking forward to sitting with you guys.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
Oh, yeah,
Thank
and
you.
sorry.
So I'm going to go over some of our accomplishments from 2025. They're also listed in greater detail in that color handout that should be on each one of the tables if you guys want to do a deeper dive. I'll be talking about our accomplishments in 2025 and also touching on the Lower Coquitlam River Watershed Plan, which I know there are several people in this room who have been with the Coquitlam River Watershed Roundtable and Society for a decade or more, and they'll be aware of the watershed plan, but there are also some new folks. So I'll briefly touch on the watershed plan. If you want, there is a more fulsome presentation on the plan available on our website as well. So our 2025 project achievements, we got a grant from Pacific Salmon Foundation, and we're able to produce a new display to take to outreach events on specifically focused on salmon in the watershed. And so you can see the display there. We brought it out to Salmon Day, which was here at Coquitlam, of course, and also to Salmon Come Home in Coquitlam. We produced several respectful recreation brochures. So that was focusing on folks with dogs and general recreation in the watershed. And thanks to the folks who were part of the, advising on that project. We had a lot of people weighing in. And it was interesting that actually was inspired by folks from citizens reaching out to us over email about dam building in the river or about people running their dogs in the river during spawning time. So it was something that I think developed quite organically. We also developed a new logo because, of course, we've changed from the roundtable to the society, and we developed more outreach materials, bookmarks, and things that we can take out to outreach events. We purchased some cleanup equipment for our stewardship groups, and we did quite a few more stewardship activities this year. We increased the number to 5 from what was usually about 2 to 3, and we also created a new resource library so that all of our numerous presentations, videos, reports are searchable online from our website. And we most recently, this is something that's still pending, but we've applied for funding to get iPads so that we can facilitate more gathering of information when we go out into the community, and hopefully we can work with our partners to figure out sort of like what information should we be gathering would be helpful to your organizations. It'll also streamline things like media releases and liability waivers and that kind of thing, which leads into some of the operational achievements of 2025. So while we're doing these projects, we also, of course, have to sort of maintain our operations. So in 2024, we completed our transition to a society, and that led to some new bylaws, new policies and procedures. So we've been implementing those this year. In 2025, we also got our society board, which is partially represented here. We've also got Councillor Dejanlik on our board, and Bonnie Razagi, who's here today with us, but not in the picture. And Glennis is there, Sonia Pecknell, Councillor Nancy McCurrat, and Margaret Birch. So yeah, we've had a very active board. We've had 4 board meetings, and they have also been providing financial oversight. So we used to have Watershed Watch's Salmon Society acting as our financial trustee, which we were very grateful to. It was a huge help for several years, but now we've grown up and we are managing our own money. So that was something else that getting our accounting system set up was an accomplishment this year. And just, of course, the standard things that you will be familiar with, probably our outreach events, our website maintenance, staff and contractor oversight. But I should point out that we've been very lucky to have several multi-year funding agreements in place since 2019 and 2020. And those are going to be expiring in 2026, at the end of 2026. So that represents about 3/4 of our funding. It'll be a big push going forward into 2027. So going from 2026, we'll need to really establish some sustainable sources of funding. So that's going to be another area where we have to put some effort. This year we've started on that. We completed a BC Community Gaming Grant and hope to find out about that in a couple of weeks. Yeah, so operations, I'll just touch on this really briefly, but we will be pursuing those sustainable sources of funding, and we'll continue to apply for project-specific grants that can help us get these projects up and off the ground. Those also usually require some matching funds. We're hoping to hire an outreach coordinator, and we'll be continuing with our website upgrades and maintenance. So our Lower Coquitlam River Watershed Plan, like I say, some of you were probably involved in this process back in 2014 or 2015 and might know more about it than me. It was through a process in 2014 and 2015 with the member organizations of the Roundtable and the public. A plan was developed to identify pressures on the watershed and to develop strategies to mitigate those pressures. And so the watershed plan is available on our website. I encourage everyone to go on there and take a look. But very briefly, these are 14 pressures that were identified through that planning process. It's sort of the top portion here tend to be what we focus on most. They were high-rated pressures. Hazardous spills are certainly a high-rated pressure, but that's something that the cities are well-equipped to deal with, much more so than we are. So the pressures that we deal with mostly are stormwater, development, invasive species, recreation, vandalism and illegal activity, which broadly tends to mean dumping and cleaning up litter, mainstream cultural norms, water extraction, and mining. And so 17 strategies were developed for those, and those strategies are possible for enacting as capacity and resources become available. And so we also tend to look at sort of opportunities that are available, folks and organizations that come forward that want to partner with us on any of this work. So stormwater. You all know, I think, probably about our rain garden in Lions Park, and we did quite a bit of work with the rain garden in 2024. We had a major rain garden renewal, and I know Nancy was there, which was lovely, and we've had a lot of support from the city of Port Coquitlam with that, and we've also had support from Port Coquitlam Community Foundation. BMP Engineering has helped us with drainage upgrades. Heidelberg Materials has helped with supplying gravel, and so has Jack Seaweed. And so, yeah, our rain garden is really in a pretty good place right now. We've also had volunteers care for it over the summer, and a lot of those volunteers have come from Riverside Secondary School. I know they've also a lot come from the membership and from general public volunteers. So we have an app that some of you may have used where you sign up, and every once a week, volunteers go out to water the rain garden in the summertime. So going forward, next year, there's a possibility of further caring for our rain garden. We could install interpretive signage of rain garden plants. We could upgrade the watering equipment there, renew hoses, gloves, and explore options possibly to make storage and access of those tools more accessible. And so there's some funding that we could apply for such a project. And also we'll just continue we will continue our volunteer program going forward with that probably for the next 2 years at least to keep those plants. Our most recent development would have been Low Impact Development Report, which was produced with help from the UBC Center for Law and the Environment. We've also done several reports dating back to 2017 on development and making development more sustainable generally in the watershed. There's also a natural space strategy from 2018. And so all of these reports are available on our website. And we've got one of the actions that's called for in the watershed plan is to develop an impact map. And so in 2020, we got the Interactive Watershed Atlas and Project Catalog. So I don't know if any of you have had occasion to use the Atlas, but it's a wonderful interactive tool that allows you to go on and see where restoration sites are, where the hatcheries are. And it could certainly be added to, and that's something that we might want to look at doing going forward into 2026. So yeah, so it's something that might benefit from a bit of a workshop on use to understand how to use it most easily and effectively, and to enable our partners to add their restoration projects onto that atlas. So it's both a sort of a using as a end user and also as a contributor. So we would probably apply for some funding to do that. And I know we're lucky to have Michael McPhee with us, who is one of the original developers of the Watershed Atlas, so it'd be great to have your help. And also, this has come up several times in recent years, interest in hosting a new watershed tour. And so that would be for, we would do one for the Coquitlam River Watershed Society members, and then also one for the public. And we would be applying for funding for that. So it would basically look like going, it would focus on the lower watershed, unlike the Metro Vancouver tours, which tend to focus on the upper watershed. And it would just go around to significant project sites in the lower watershed. Invasive species. We've done quite a bit on invasive species. In 2022, we produced a video with the help of Julie on invasive species in the watershed, and we've done several pulls. We can get doing some more pulls. We also have a kit that we take out to outreach events that educates the public about what invasive species are present here and also native species. So actions that we could potentially take on that in 2026 and 27 would include a walk or workshop to teach high school students about invasive plants and their effects. Or we might want to look at adopting an area where volunteers would regularly go out and remove invasive species and replant with native plants. We've talked briefly with the city about doing an adopt an area, and from what I understand, it's a fairly big commitment. It would be a regular commitment each week to go out and care for that area. So if we choose to do that, it will probably require some coordination, some equipment, the development of an app similar to the one that we've got for the rain garden. Vandalism and illegal activity or illegal dumping. So we've done quite a few cleanup events this year, and that's building on a sort of a long tradition of doing cleanup events. We've also produced a video back in 2022 about the effects of illegal dumping and littering on wildlife and on habitat health in Maple Creek. Going forward, we're looking at potentially making that part of an adopt an area initiative with the cities. So it would be invasive species. One requiring less oversight and coordination would be to just focus on doing litter removal. We would provide our volunteers with some cleanup equipment and a sign-up tool. But those two could dovetail nicely and be part of the same program. Yeah, and we will just continue to host those periodic cleanup activities. QMC Water Meters has been really great about having their staff come out and do cleanup activities in Gates Park once or twice a year. And we've also done a few events this year with Riverside School, secondary school students. Recreation. So I've spoken a little bit about the respectful recreation brochures that we developed this year. We've had them available since about August, and we've been taking them out to events. But there's more that could be done on that. I also just want to point out here that as we were getting all those concerns coming in about people running their dogs in the rivers, students at Castle Park Elementary School created some artwork which was then installed on signs along the Port Coquitlam side of Coquitlam River, and so we went out to do a workshop with those students. So it's something that also could be done, is we could do a respectful recreation workshop with students in schools, and we could reach out to other stakeholder groups such as canoe and kayak clubs, dog owners, New Canadian groups, schools, youth. We could also develop some videos on respectful recreation and develop multi-language materials. And so there is potential funding for that project as well. And also there has been some interest from academic institutions. So I know Langara has a recreation management program there. And we've talked a little bit about, maybe they could come out here to the watershed and look at some opportunities for some respectful recreation activities. And I think there's probably some academic institutions here within the watershed, either Douglas or Kwikwetlem, that might have a similar program. Salmon and habitat. The watershed plan addresses salmon and aquatic habitat through several different strategies because it cuts across so many of these issues. So some work that we've done recently on salmon and aquatic habitat. There's been quite a lot. As I mentioned, we did our new displays. We also, in 2024, we did a video on fish-friendly floodgates in Coquitlam Regional Park. and just trying to build some public support for replacing all of that outdated infrastructure there. We also installed the large concrete salmons with the help of staff from Fisheries and Oceans at our rain garden. We've had several presentations on salmon and steelhead populations at community meetings or online. And we also had a great presentation from Lane Myrie, or two actually, on toxicology studies in the watershed that would be affecting salmon and other aquatic species. Yeah. So going forward, there's certainly interest in planning a visit for our members up to the new Coquitlam sockeye hatchery. We've talked with Rodney Lee a little bit about that, and we're hoping to do that in the springtime. And we'd like to provide, there have also been, and several of you will have heard about this through email chains, I think, as well. There have been many reports coming in to the Coquitlam, to my email, about concerns around boat activity in the rivers during salmon spawning, or blockages in streams and creeks. And so it would be good to provide the public with a sort of a more comprehensive page on our website that would allow them to report concerns like this, provide advice on what they need to gather in order to report them properly, and who to report those concerns to. Finally, water extraction and mining. So we've done several studies on increasing flows. Well, this study was done in 2020 on increasing flows in the Coquitlam River. And we've also invited the aggregates to the roundtable to present to the public on their operations to mitigate their water extraction. And we could probably, given the new pipeline that's going in along Pipeline Road, of course, for water extraction, we could certainly look at expanding our education for water conservation among the public. And so we'd be working with our partners to develop some messaging around that. And that is basically it. You can ask some questions now about that. But if you have thoughts and suggestions too, we're going to be doing breakout groups after this where we can talk more in depth and then bring our suggestions forward to the entire group.
All right, everybody.
After the presentations, there was just enough time for a quick group photo before attendees broke into groups to discuss their plans for next year. Tri-Cities Community TV looks forward to bringing you more coverage of their activities in 2026. For Tri-Cities Community TV, I'm Jeff Scott.